All right, guys, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I see we've still got some people coming in, so we will let them in as they roll up, but it's 9:05, so let's get to it this morning. First of all, I want to thank all of our panelists for joining the Farragut West Knox Chamber this morning to offer some education and some assistance and just some really good real-world advice to our businesses. Most of you know that we've been doing these webinars for about a month now, and they've been really successful. And I think what works about them is the fact that you, the business panelists, you are business owners, you're advisors. And so this is what you do in your everyday life. And so it makes sense for us to be getting advice from you guys. I'm Julie, of course, for those that haven't met me here on the webinar. I'm the president of the Farragut West Knox Chamber, and it's my pleasure to get to serve all of our members. So let's go ahead and take it away. We're going to kick off with a round of introductions. So we've got 4 panelists this morning, and in no particular order, I'm going to call you guys out. Take yourself off of mute and just give us a quick 1 to 2 minute introduction of who you are and what's your business background and years of experience. Let's go ahead and kick it off with Jim.
Well, of course. Good morning, everybody. Real quick, Graphic Creations was started in 1987 by my father. I've been here since 2009, bought his half of the business that year, and then in 2018, bought my partner out, and have been focused on growing the business. And we primarily, up until about March 16th, are a print company, do anything from business cards to vehicle wraps, have in-house design, and also do promotional and apparel stuff. But we've been doing a lot of different things since March 16th that don't involve printing. And go ahead, sorry, Julie.
Oh no, you go ahead.
So we've just, as we'll talk about today, we've shifted, our focus to assist businesses in the community and abroad with PPE stuff, things from counter shields to face shields to cloth masks, anything that we can do to help inside the community to get everybody ready for what we're going to talk about today is getting open and being safe.
Awesome. We're glad to have you, Jim. We appreciate you taking the time because I know you're busy right now. All right. Let's take it over to John Haney. John?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is John Haney. I'm a commercial real estate broker here with NAI Cole Moore. I've been in commercial real estate now since 2008. Prior to that, I initially came to Knoxville. I was a sportscaster, worked for WATE Channel 6. And in a prior life before that, I was actually an attorney. So someday when I grow up, I'll figure out what I want to be. But seem to be enjoying the commercial real estate brokerage. Our particular firm, outstanding firm. We had a merger a few years ago between NAI Knoxville and the RM Moore Sperry Van Ness. So we've come together with Roger Moore and Maribel Cola. We have a brokerage team that simply the leading brokerage here for commercial real estate in East Tennessee. And so I think we can certainly help some people. Look forward to giving a few suggestions here during the upcoming presentation. Appreciate you allowing me to join everybody.
We are very happy to have you, John, and I've made a note to Google old recordings of WATE to see if I can find you.
Probably out there.
All right, let's take it on over to Bill from MBI Companies.
Good morning. My name is Bill Steverson. I'm an architect and president of MBI Companies. We are a full-service architecture and engineering company. We have over 90 employees. We have 3 offices. Our main office is here in Knoxville. We do have an office in Chattanooga and one outside of Orlando, Florida. We are licensed in all 50 states. As far as the services we provide, obviously architecture was what we started out as, but we also have civil engineering, structural engineering, mechanical engineering, which includes fire protection and plumbing, electrical engineering, interior design. We also have an in-house surveying crew that we use that not only does exterior surveys and replats and subdivisions and things like that, but they also do some interior scanning, real-time scanning of interior spaces, which in this time when people are trying to figure out what they've got and where things are is vitally important. We also have an IT department that handles software, hardware, and networking needs for clients. And then we have a construction services department that helps with owner rep services, also does some cost estimating, scheduling, and a little bit of construction. So obviously, people trying to adapt to current situation, what's going on, trying to figure out what they have and where they want to go with their current spaces is vital. And that's something we've been doing for, like I said, I've been with MBI for over 27 years. So it's something we've been doing every day for the last, almost, we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. So over 30 years. So
30 years is a huge milestone, Bill. Congratulations. And congratulations on a long and continuing successful career. All right, let's take it over to our last but certainly not least panelist, Ms. Donna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Donna Kimball, and I'm with AA Air Company. We're a residential light commercial heating and air conditioning contractor. I'm the second generation in the business. My dad started in 1973, and we also have the third generation in the business today, which is a little bit challenging sometimes. But for years, I was the primary estimator. I was the one that showed up to do system design and pricing and what have you. But now I'm more in the office and running the business, and it seems like I spend more time marketing than anything. Happy to be here today and help in any way that I can.
Awesome. And if you guys haven't seen the picture of AA Air's little mini car Speedy with a mask on the front grill, you have to look that up on Facebook. It is the cutest dang thing I think I've seen in terms of marketing. So good job. All right. I want to remind everybody who's attending this morning, we're going to go through a series of 5 questions. We're going to give each panelist approximately 1 or 2 minutes crack at each question, but I encourage you to put your questions in the chat. Also go ahead and drop your contact information, just to kind of let people know who's here and how they can contact you. We always take an opportunity to do a little light networking when we do these. And we will pull questions from the chat as they come up as best we can. So with that said, let's get to it. So the topic for today is the way to your safe space. And we gave it that name just to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but really it's a literal term right now. Space and the office is not what it used to be. And as much as we'd like to argue the alternative, it's not business as normal or usual, guys. You've got the concern of employees coming back to work in phases, and then you've got customers that don't yet feel safe getting out and about. So the question becomes, how do you change your space in order to make your staff feel safe and comply with all the rules? And then also, how do you make your space feel good and warm and welcoming so that your clients and your customers feel good about coming back as well? The first question, and I'll repeat the question for every panelist just to kind of keep you guys on track. The first question is, how should a business owner or a manager start to figure out how to make social distancing work in their space? Now, I know this is a broad question, guys. I know we've got businesses that have offices. We have businesses that have retail space. Then you have restaurants. So the breadth is wide. But where would you suggest that a business owner start to figure out how to make social distancing work based on your area of expertise? Bill, you feel comfortable? Let's start with you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I think the first thing you need to do is understanding how your business flows and works, not only your employees, but your customers. So how not only they enter your space, enter your building, but how they interact, everything from, making their way from the lobby to their workspace, to the break area, to the restroom, to how they exit. How do you receive customers, whether it's a retail store or an office building, when they come in? How are they greeted? How are they interacted? So understanding how your work flows currently, and then comparing that to where the CDC guidelines are, to understanding where are those conflicts, whether it's distance, seating distance, or it's hallways or passageways where people, stairways, restrooms, break areas. understanding where those conflicts happen, and then sitting down and figuring out, well, how can we, strategize on how we keep our flow going the way we want it and eliminate some of those conflicts. A prime example is public restrooms. I mean, how do we think about we deal with public restrooms? Obviously, social distancing is a very tough thing to happen in a restroom situation. Break rooms, when you have multiple employees, first thing they do is come in and everybody gets a cup of coffee. Well, that's a challenge. When people come into your office, how are they addressed? Are they allowed just to walk in? Things like that. So being able to understand and be welcoming and open. So it's more than just spreading people apart, but how do they interact? How do they flow throughout the space? If you got a tight corridor or a tight stairwell and people are passing each other, if you have an elevator, elevators can be tight spots. So understanding where those conflicts are and figuring out, well, what's the best way to address that, handle that, and still maintain how we operate and how we flow.
Great way to get us started off. And, you mentioned restrooms and break rooms, those are the areas that honestly we don't really think about because they're just so functional. But social distancing has to be practiced everywhere. So you're so right, Bill. All right, same question. Let's take it over to John. John, how would you tell a business owner or manager to start figuring out how to make this social distancing thing work?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple things going on. First of all, if just kind of a broad picture, if your tooth is bothering you, you're going to talk to a dentist. If you got a problem going on with your engine in your car, you're going to talk to a mechanic. If you've got questions, issues about your real estate, your office, your store, probably need to talk to your real estate advisor and dig a little deeper in actually what you're trying to accomplish. So there's really no quick answer to it. As you said earlier, Julie, it depends drastically on, are you a restaurant or are you a doctor's office or are you, any other choice of commercial real estate you can come to. So with that said, again, you just got to start with the phone call and try to peel this back and figure out what you're trying to accomplish. Also, you're going to try to balance, what are we trying to do short term versus long term? Because again, some of these requirements are going to be temporary based on getting, kind of back to a little bit more of a normal, from the word everybody's tired of hearing, situation. And some things you may want to try to do permanently. So again, I think you just got to decide what you're trying to accomplish. Let us visit with you, and then we may put you in touch more with like an architect like Bill or space planner or folks like Jim that would need to come in and try to give you some protective devices. But just kind of start investigating a little bit, and we'd be happy to visit with you to allow you to get started on that process.
Awesome. Thank you, John. All right, let's take it over to Donna at this point. Donna, what advice would you give to an owner or manager to start to figure out how to make social distancing really work?
Most of our equipment is pretty socially distant. It's down in a basement, it's up over a ceiling, it's on a rooftop, but part of what we're delivering may impact your social distancing. You may have large volumes of air moving across open rooms. So you may have your 6 foot distance, but the moving air in the space may be changing that just a little bit. So it would be a good idea to review what's happening with airflow in the system as part of the social distancing plan.
Yeah, HVAC is that kind of thing that you don't really think about as long as it works the way you want it to until it doesn't. So it's, that's why we brought AA Air Company on here, because we wanted to address some of those invisible concerns. And those are concerns that we are hearing about as the chamber from the general public. The community and consumers are not ignorant of the fact that viruses and things like that can travel through the air. So they are paying attention and doing their research. And And it's possible that a business owner might get questions about how they're handling their airflow, and whether they are sure that that air is clean and purified. All right, awesome. Wrapping this question up with Jim. Jim, what kinds of advice are you giving or would you give business owners to help them just start to figure out how to enforce and make social distancing work in their space?
Very interesting thing to think about. I think, listening to the other panelists, we're all experts in the fields that, we reside in. And so this new situation has not really made us experts. It's just made us think differently about, how we're going to interact. So, I tread lightly with the term expert, but because we were deemed essential, and by the way, I hate that term essential because I think every business that's on this, on this call is essential to our community. But that being said, we were allowed to come to work and do the things that we were doing. And so I think we had a unique situation to kind of begin to figure out, because I have 26 employees. And so we're all interacting and working and trying to figure out, how to do this on the fly. And because of that, on top of, I made a really bad decision. I didn't know it was a bad decision, but decided to do construction right before this all started. So I had HVAC people in here. I had contractors. Hartson Construction was in here every day. And so on top of my employees trying to figure out how to interact with themselves, they're also dealing with outside influence. So we had on-the-job training that was, really effective, and we came together figuring out what we wanted to do. And to the comment about, the CDC guidelines, we were checking that and following that as close as we could. So the basic things are, think about what your customer is going to feel like when they walk through the door in that interaction with your customer and your employees. So, things like the social distance floor graphics, just making it easy for people to figure out how to do what they need to do without trying to guess, taking the guesswork out, having a, counter shield. My assistant up in the front, she, is dealing with all the customers coming in. So she felt a little threatened when people would walk through the door. So we immediately, that's how we kind of fell into the counter shield stuff, is that was protecting our employees. And so from there, it kind of took off, and it just makes sense for businesses. But, we did little things like the postman. We just made him drop the mail outside. We put a box out there, less interaction coming in. So I think just the common sense approach to starting at your front door and then working through your business and the things that you can do for everybody is key. One thing that I've found too with our employees is, don't doubt their concern to be safe. They're going around into the break rooms and the bathrooms and sanitizing and spraying and cleaning. So as a team, it becomes very effective to, help us all be successful.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that common sense approach, Jim. That's something that can be in short supply when we're dealing with things that we've never dealt before and are scary. All right, question number 2. Say that a business realizes they need to make some physical changes to their space. What are those first steps? So they realize they can't socially distance with what they have now. They need to change something. Where do they go from there? Let's take it back over to Bill on that one.
Okay. Again, I think kind of going back and talking about what I mentioned earlier is kind of sitting down and documenting what you currently have. What is your current layout? Where are things located? Not only walls and doors and windows, but utilities. Where are your grid? Your registers? Where are your outlets? Where are your data ports? And things like that. And then look at where you want to go. Kind of an example I thought about last night. I was, most stores have made short-term design decisions. Basically what it is, it's tape on the floor. If you go to a store and they've got little tape on the floor about, when you're waiting in line to check out to keep you distant. Well, I was at one store and the line went all the way into the aisle. Into one of the aisles. So that doesn't work. It's short-term, it works, but not long-term. So sitting down and do we look at, reorganizing the way the registers are laid out. And in doing that, we have to relocate the power and the data ports and all the things that are associated with the registers. Or maybe we look at relaying out the aisles and changing that direction. And talking with meeting with an architect, meeting with the designer and talking about knowing how your business operates and how you want it to be efficiently operate compared to what you have to do with the CDC guidelines. You know, restaurants, you know, now with the trying to lower capacity, that really affects their bottom line business. If they can only seat half as many customers as they were previously being able to seat, you know, what does that do long term? Do they expand the size of their footprint? Are they open longer? Do they, you know, raise the prices of their menu items? You know, what are some of the things they can do to accommodate? And those are kind of long-term goals on what they want to do. And so sitting down, understanding how they want to operate, how they want to be, how it affects their business, and then looking about what we can do to change their physical environment to accommodate those, to make sense, not only for, you know, a year from now, but 5 years from now. One thing people talk about, you know, use the term new normal. And one thing I always tell my folks is, you know, change is constant. If there's anything that's always normal is change. And so this is just another thing that's changing. And so just being able to adapt, being flexible, and think about these things as you go about.
Yeah, we say that at the chamber too. We say forward movement always involves friction, and we don't like that. Before I let you go on this question, Bill, is there a tipping point? I mean, if you have a business or an owner, they've never really worked with an architect. You know, maybe they landed in a space that was ready to go. Who knows? Is there a tipping point at which they really need to sit down with an architect before they try to DIY, as it's so popular?
Well, I would recommend that, you know, like Jim had said earlier, I mean, if you have a toothache, you go to a dentist. If your car starts making a funny noise, you go to a mechanic. If you're going to make any change at all, I would recommend contacting an architect and seeing, because like I said, everybody thinks, well, an architect, he's going to want to do a new building or he's going to do a huge addition. Well, sometimes, you know, we sit down and we just rearrange, you know, their existing fixtures and furniture, and it accomplishes what they need. So it's sitting down with people that have a general idea and a general expertise in flow and spatial concepts and how things work. And so don't be afraid to call us. Don't be afraid to contact us, because we can really help a lot. We're not, you know, our first solution isn't always build a brand new building. Our first solution is to improve, you know, that's our motto, improve the lives of our clients through design. So understanding how we can improve, you know, what you're doing, your business through design, and understanding your budget and your schedule and those types of things.
Awesome. And I do need to throw a quick FYI that came our way recently. Any of you that work with the town of Farragut, architects or customers, we got the word that if you need help with permitting, if you need to move some walls around, you need to talk to Carl up in permitting at the town of Farragut. So Bill put Carl's name in your back pocket in case you need him. He will help get things moved along for you, especially now. All right, same question. Let's go over to Donna with HVAC, with air. If someone knows that they need physical changes, what are your recommended first steps in terms of what you guys are providing?
Just to reiterate, go to people that know their specific area. So get your HVAC person involved early, so you know if you can add a register, if you can move a return. You know, there could be obstacles to the structure that you're not aware of. So don't assume that you can just do this. Involve your HVAC person early in your changes. And we're happy to help too.
That's the idea. You guys all should be ready and willing to help, and I know you are. All right, let's take it over to John Haney. Dealing with people that, you know, lease their space. They don't own it, they lease it. What happens if they know they need to make some physical changes? What do you recommend, John?
And that's the key word you said there. So there's a difference between a property owner and a tenant. So if you're a tenant and you're leasing an office, leasing a storefront, et cetera, you are initially bound by your lease agreement. So rule number one, check out the lease before you want to come in and try to do any type of construction renovations. The landlord often has the authority under the lease to review and approve those changes. Now, you're not going to have to talk to the landlord to put some tape on the floor or to put up a screen. But if you're trying to, maybe you had a large open area and you think, well, I want to build this out with some offices, that type of thing, just understand 9 out of 10 times the landlord will approve it, but they may have some reason that they think, well, that's going to devalue the space or make it less marketable in the future. And potentially they could tell you, no, we're not going to allow that. And you may have made changes without consulting them, and they may ask you or require you under the lease to put it back like it was when you move out. So again, just start with the lease. Let someone that knows what these leases entail look at it. I would, estimate or suggest that, again, the majority of the time the landlord's going to cooperate with you, but just before you jump in there and get out your sledgehammer and start going to town, just pause and see what you're allowed to do there under the document that you've signed to take over that space.
John, you must be talking to my husband behind my back, because I've been trying to take a sledgehammer to one of our bathrooms and he won't let me. He keeps saying, wait.
Easy.
All right, Jim, let's talk to you. Physical changes. What do you recommend an owner start with if they know they need to make some changes to make everything work?
Well, the first thing that I did is I took John's advice and I checked with myself, since I own my own property, before I did anything. So we were in good shape, but it was good advice, John. Interesting enough, I was talking about the construction and was not intentional, but we were glassing off our lobby to separate noise from our business, our manufacturing side, to the lobby, because we have a lot of people coming in our building. And ironically, it just worked out that was actually had, dual benefit, because we isolated kind of the front area and keep our customers feeling safer and, getting rid of the noise. But I think the little things that, you can do first yourself before getting into massive construction, or, light construction even, is the floor graphics. I think that Bill mentioned earlier that he's seen in places, something a little bit more attractive than a blue X. And as a matter of fact, in terms of layout, one of the things I noticed in a department store, I won't say which one, they did a really good job of doing blue X's front to back, 6 feet apart. But I guess the virus doesn't travel left to right, because to the left was, you can stand anywhere, to the right, you can stand anywhere. So you just got to be mindful of the whole space. I think people get kind of tunnel vision on what they think they need to do versus, kind of taking the blinders off and looking around. But there's real basic things. And I say this because we've done it, not because we can do it, but we did it for ourselves and can do it for others. The floor graphics, the counter shields, face shields, things like that, hand sanitizer stations. Those are really basic things you can do before you make that next, bigger step for the longer term plan, which, long term can be 2 months now. I mean, we used to think long term 6 months, do a business plan for a year. Now we're planning, 4 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 12 weeks out. So look at those little steps as you go along.
And real quick question, Jim. I know that obviously if you're working with an architect, they're going to come walk your space at some point. Same with HVAC, because they need to see how your system lays out. What about your business, Graphic Creations? I know you guys do a lot of printing and design. Are you at this point, are you willing to go out and walk somebody's space to kind of help them figure out what they need?
Yes. Matter of fact, while we were talking, Candace from Water to Wine texted me and said, I need to do something for our bar area. Can you come out and look and help us with what to do in terms of, doing counter shield or some type of barrier between the bar and, bartender and clients, so everybody feels safe. So we'll absolutely come out and do that. And we can make those shields any size, any shape. We custom cut them here. So a lot of flexibility there. It's not one size fits all for sure.
Awesome. We just wanted to bring that up because, I think when we think about graphic design, we think about calling in or getting online and saying, I want that product right there, stick my logo on it, and that's the end of the transaction. But it's nice to know, and thank you, Jim, for going the extra mile and doing more and really getting involved in people's spaces so they can get what they need. We appreciate that. All right, question number 3, guys. We're moving right along. The question is, what can business owners or businesses change to make things cleaner and safer for both staff and customers? Now, we all have gotten whatever cleaning wipes we can get our hands on. We've all gotten hand sanitizer. We know about all that. But what can they change as it relates to their space? Any advice there? Let's take it over to Donna.
Several things. The return air grill is pulling back the bulk of the air in the building, and it's a hard surface that should be cleaned regularly, daily even. And I'll take this moment to remind you that anybody handling filtration should be using PPE, glasses, mask, gloves. If it's a disposable filter, it should be bagged where it's removed to be carried out of the building. If it's a washable filter, it should probably be disinfected. 10% bleach is fine. But that's kind of an important step that people aren't really thinking about. The biggest thing that ASHRAE says, that's American Society of Heating and Air Conditioning Refrigeration Engineers, says increased ventilation. There's a variety of ways that this happens. A newer building already has some level of ventilation. You can increase outside air significantly. That's dilution of the space, and that's always a beneficial thing, except in the South, because as temperatures rise and humidity rises, the systems may struggle to keep up with a large amount of outside air. So, and then the third thing, somebody already mentioned the restrooms. Make sure that the exhaust systems for restrooms are fully functional, that the ducting is exiting the building and that it's intact, and keep restroom doors closed. I mean, most of the time they are, but sometimes they aren't in some businesses. So keep the door to the restroom area closed. Then after that, there's a variety of filters and purifiers that can be added. We're hearing a lot about UV light lately. There's UV lights that can be added to residential and commercial equipment. There are plasma systems. These are bipolar ionizers that can actually kill bacteria and viruses. Nobody claims to kill the coronavirus, but they do know it will impact viruses. And these can be added to just about any system.
Yeah, I didn't even think about needing to clean that main return, and wearing PPE with those filters. So good advice there. Let's kind of segue off that and let's go over to Bill from MBI, because I think this relates. Bill, what things are you guys recommending to your clients or to business owners to overall make things cleaner and safer in their space for their staff and their customers?
Well, I think, the key is, hard cleanable surfaces where you can, or what we'd recommend. And a lot of this, like I said, is kind of common sense, regimented cleaning routine, at least daily. And then in high traffic areas, if you have certain items that are touched a lot, maybe those get cleaned hourly or at least wiped down hourly, taken care of more often. Security and technology, everybody's seeing technology as far as people working from home. That's one way to help with keeping things safe, is allowing people to not congregate as much, so lessening the density in your office building. And in security, monitoring who comes and goes into your space, as far as, making sure here at our office, we've got a little QR code as you come to the front door, and you basically put your camera up to it and it asks you the 3 questions. Have you had a temperature over 101.1 in the last 24 hours? Do you feel sick? Have you vomited? And you have to answer those questions before it lets you in. And so just something real simple like that's a real easy technological thing to help with that. Don had mentioned HVAC. One of the first things, people talk about, well, I want to get a bunch of real heavy filters, a bunch of HEPA filters, and stick them in my system and all that. And I'm like, whoa, time out. You may not have enough draw where those filters will work. So, first thing you need to do is, get an engineer or get somebody like Don to come in and look at your system and making sure that, you don't put something that's going to hinder airflow as it works. So, more filtration is better. Just make sure your existing system can handle the filtration you want to use, or upgrade your system. Lighting, Don had mentioned about lighting, but hospitals for years have been using these special lights that emit a light wave that kills bacteria, and they use them a lot in their operating rooms and things like that. We've been using them in educational facilities like locker rooms and bathrooms, things like that, where they have a certain wavelength that'll kill a lot of bacteria and certain things that help stave off like, staph or those types of viruses that are out there. And so there's a lot of those technologies that are available. You just have to know about them and use them. And so that's kind of the steps we've been recommending and taking with our folks.
Yeah, those are some great additions. Thank you for that. Let's take it over to John. To make things cleaner and safer for employees and customers, dealing with landlords, and of course we talked about checking your lease. What do you recommend? And, how does someone go about negotiating with their landlord? What things can they ask for and should they ask for their landlord to do?
Well, a bit of a broad question there, and I don't want to overstep into sounding like a medical or a health expert in terms of sanitation, but that is an interesting question you posed about the landlord. Specifically, some leases, as part of the lease agreement, the landlord provides janitorial services. It might be a good conversation for the tenant to dig a little deeper with the landlord, what exactly is being done in terms of the cleaning, the sanitation, so that we could, feel good about things. And if the tenant's providing that or doing that themselves, they still may have hired a janitorial company. They could have the conversation directly with them. So that's probably an area that would be beneficial to people. You're seeing a trend as well in some offices. If you really aren't able to create the social distance that you want or need currently within your current space setup, people are staggering shifts. Maybe you've got 20 people that work in an office. You'll have 10 of them come in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The other 10 come in Tuesday, Thursday. Whatever the case may be. But that's a way to at least get the use of your space and not have everyone sort of breathing all over each other at this time. Those would be a couple of things I think could be helpful to folks.
Yeah, really, really good points. That's why we're glad you're here, John, for this part of the conversation. All right, Jim, let's take it over to you. How to make things cleaner and safer overall for both staff and clients. What kinds of things are you recommending?
Well, I think, the basic items have been mentioned, by everybody else. The only thing that I would really add is yesterday, I had a company come in and brought electrostatic gun and basically fogged our building and disinfected it for bacteria and virus and any other type of surface contaminants. Took about 30 minutes, did 13,000 square feet, and 10 minutes after that was done, all surfaces are, cleaned. There's no wiping, there's nothing, no residue left behind. So it's basically the same thing they're doing on the airlines. United Airlines is doing it after every flight. So we did that in here yesterday. Fairly inexpensive. The electrostatic gun's probably the most expensive part, but roughly a gallon of that solution will do 10,000 square feet, and it runs around $15 a gallon. So if you were doing that, once a day, once a week, something like that. So we're kind of exploring that outside of what the normal things that everybody else has mentioned.
Yeah, a really interesting and unique solution to the problem. So thank you for mentioning that. Okay, question number 4. We talked about, making short-term versus long-term changes. I think all of you have touched on that. Certainly to get reopened, and we've heard rumors. If you've been watching the news, we know that our county mayor is urging a relaxation of restrictions as early as the 22nd. So just 2 days from now. So we could be getting to reopen in more full capacity a lot sooner. The quick stuff works for now, but what about long-term? So what I want to ask you is, what's the number one thing that you would tell someone to think about in terms of changes to their space for long-term? Let's take it on over to Bill.
Okay. We often refer to this as master planning. when you're thinking about not next week, not next month, but you're thinking about, even not even next year. You're thinking about 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Is the space, is my current space, am I leasing? Do I own? If I'm leasing, is there available space adjacent that I can assume and take that over to expand if I see that in my future? Or will I have to relocate? Or is there an option to purchase? So understanding where you want to be. Some businesses, when they talk about growth, isn't necessarily number of employees, it's in volume of production. And so depending on where those production facilities are, if they're located where the head office is or if they're separate. So looking at where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I know that's sometimes hard to think about when in today's society, when everything's kind of seems like everybody's flying by the seat of their pants, but understanding where you want to be, and not just personally, but business wise, how's your business growing? How are you adapting? How's it going forth? And then strategizing to do that. And again, taking the necessary, short-term fixes to accommodate what's going on now. But, right today it's COVID-19, 2 years from now, it could be something different. So, understanding just the general concept of physical distancing and technology and how we operate and how that's going to mold into your business. Flexibility is one of the things we often talk about to our clients when we talk about them about either rearranging their space or designing space or creating a new space. You want to not only take care of your needs today, but have the flexibility to grow and to adapt into the future. So taking that into account on how you lay things out to make sure that you can do that easily and effectively and within a budget, as things go forward.
Absolutely. Jim, let's take it back over to you because I reviewed the packet of extra content, which chamber members who are attending are going to get. And these have additional questions that these panelists took extra time to answer for you. It's a really good packet. But Jim, I read that you mentioned how, there are certain things that are going to stick around. I mean, this pandemic has changed how we do business and how customers think about going out into the business world. So what's the number one thing that you would recommend for long-term planning and change?
Well, keeping it basic, I think that the counter shields beyond the pandemic makes so much sense. They're not, it's not intimidating. It doesn't create, a massive sense of separation, but yet it gives you safety. And so I was thinking, beyond the pandemic, whether we come up with a vaccine or not, the flu, as it runs rampant in the wintertime and fall. I mean, think about somebody walking into your business and they come in and they sneeze. Well, I mean, I would still like to have that barrier between me and anybody else, whether it's COVID or it's the flu or just, any other, contagious type disease. So I think that those things will stay. I think, the jury's out on the mask. I mean, you see it all over social media. If the masks work, why can't we get back to work? And if they don't work, why are we wearing them? So that debate will continue. The one thing I do know is that the N95 or KN95 masks are the only thing that will protect you from COVID. So that's why it's so heavily desired in the hospitals and the medical field. And quite frankly, that's kind of how we, morphed into what we're doing, is that we had a source to get some of that for our hospitals here locally. And because we're in the promotional business, there's a little bit of crossover. So I think those things, the actual protective stuff, will stay in certain fields. But, as a retailer, I think we'll just see some basic sanitation changes that we've all talked about already. And those counter shields, I believe, will be fairly prevalent.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you also, Jim. I think some of this stuff is going to stick around for a long time. John, let's take it over to you. What's the number one thing that you would tell clients to think about for the long term in terms of change or planning?
Well, this may be an opportunity, the timing of it, to kind of reassess where you're at with your commercial real estate needs and process. Maybe you're currently leasing, look and see how much time you've got left on your lease. If you've only got a year left on your lease, well, then it's not going to make sense to make a large investment into reconfiguring your space. That may be an opportunity to look at relocating. Bill had mentioned, could you expand? Maybe you've been in a position where you're renting, leasing, you want to own. So probably just using this as maybe a catalyst to change. And do we really want to keep doing what we're doing where we're at, or look across the street or across town, or whatever the case may be? But again, it's kind of hard to answer that in a vacuum of what specific thing to do, but maybe just take that step back and, as Bill said, use some of that master planning type of long range perspective, because commercial real estate, as you know, really is a long term. Even a short lease is 3 years, and that's a decent amount of time, and some are 5 or 7 or 10. And if you buy a property, you're going to own it for as long as you own it. So these things need to be done just a little bit methodical approach, as opposed to run around, oh my gosh, let's do a bunch of stuff, and then we'll get new guidelines in a month and we got to do a bunch of stuff again. So as the famous basketball coach John Wooden once said, be quick, but don't hurry.
That's a good one. I am a perpetrator of hurrying at times. I'll remember that. Well, and you're right. These are hard questions to answer in a vacuum, but I'm going to use that coin of phrase to take it over to Donna. Donna, what's the number one thing that you would tell people to think about in terms of their long-term plan or changes?
In the scope of heating and air conditioning, the immediate thing is to have good maintenance done on your piece of equipment. But for the long term, to have a relationship with a quality contractor that does high level maintenance and knows your building, your business very well. Technicians in and out of your building regularly, seeing problems, taking care of problems. The best way for you to have clean, healthy air in your building is to have a clean and fully operating heating and air system. So I would encourage you to build a long-term relationship with a quality HVAC contractor.
Yeah, I mean, and from the chamber's perspective, we obviously, because of what we do, we encourage building strong relationships with all your vendors, but certainly right now your HVAC, because it actually matters more than you think it does. All right, we've got 8 minutes left, and this last question is actually a good one because it kind of wraps final thoughts into it. For the attendees that are members of the chamber and are getting the packet, we will send you contact information for all the panelists. I highly encourage you to reach back out with questions or concerns or anything they might be able to help you with. All right, so the final thing, and Donna, we'll just go ahead and stick with you if you don't care. What can you do today? And I know that's hard. What can you do today before you leave to go see that grandbaby to help someone who is struggling with all this right now?
We are happy, and I know all these panelists are, we're happy to advise in any manner. I would encourage anybody to reach out, ask us questions. We don't mind to visit the site, walk through, see what advice we can give. Reach out to people that are in the scope of where your concerns are. Just reach out to them today to help you.
Okay, awesome. John, let's take it over to you. What can you do today to help somebody who's struggling with all this right now?
I think one thing that we provide and offer that would be a benefit is we have a team of brokers here, and we all specialize in various types of properties. So we've got men and women who are experts in industrial properties versus other people who retail, such as stores and restaurants, versus other people maybe offices or medical offices. And again, all of these different uses may require different solutions. So I'd be happy to help anyone if they want to reach out to me, and then I could send them over to one of my colleagues who may be better equipped to help them. But again, it's just a matter of trying to determine what the need is and how best we could help them. Another thing that I think we can offer that might be helpful when we're talking about tenants and maybe they want to make changes to either the physical property or even their lease and the way it's structured down the road. We have relationships with numerous landlords in Knoxville and the surrounding areas. So we may be able to help bridge the gap between tenant and landlord to get the conversation and the solution that works for both those parties. So again, just let us kind of dig into it and help you, and we'll take a case-by-case basis.
Awesome. And that's a great offer, because I know that not all tenants have a close relationship with their landlord, especially if the landlord is a multiple property owner off-site. So that's a great offer. Thank you for that, John. All right, Jim, over to you. What can you and your team do today to help someone who's struggling with all this?
Well, I think, many of the things that we've mentioned earlier in terms of, visual communication and some physical barriers that are things that we're producing immediately and now can be implemented pretty quickly. So if people need help getting ready to get open, as I mentioned, like, Candace at Water to Wine, we can move swiftly. We have a lot of things already pre-made and ready to go. If it needs to be customized, cut, counter shield differently than maybe what we have in stock, we can accommodate that fairly quickly too. So, feel free to give us a call as it comes to any of those items, one or all of them. It may be beneficial to certain businesses. We've been in hair salons, we've been in nail salons, we've been in orthopedic businesses, putting these shields in. So when you go to the nail salon or go to get a pedicure, it's going to look a lot different than it did the last time you went. So, and they're moving, those industries are moving pretty quickly because their interaction is so close with their clients. So, we've seen a big push there. And I think restaurants are going to be kind of the next wave as they get open and start having more capacity to sit. As it relates to printing, in order to keep social distancing, intact, if we need to ship, you've got a UPS guy coming in there instead of having us and the UPS guy and the postman, we can utilize UPS to ship to you here locally. We're not going to charge to ship. We're just going to try to keep things convenient and efficient as we can for our clients. So we'd be glad to help in any way.
Thank you for that, Jim. We really, really appreciate you guys. We know you do great work because we see it driving all over the place. All right. Last but certainly not least, because he has my favorite coffee mug, Bill.
Well,
Help us wrap this up strong. What can you and your team do today to help a client who's struggling with all this right now?
Well, I think this is a great wrap-up question, because I think what I would recommend is that you've put together a pretty good panel here of folks for people to contact and call starting today. I would recommend they would contact us or another architect, designer, to evaluate their current space and understand, where they want to go. Contact somebody like John, in commercial real estate, to understand if they're leasing, if they're owning, where they want to be, how they want to grow, if they want to expand, if they want to stay where they're at, extend their lease. Somebody like Jim to take care of their current, PPE stuff. That's fantastic that they're doing that. And then long-term, graphics, signage, and how are we going to direct traffic and flow and people in our space and throughout. And then Donna, I think I don't know if she's been sturgeon enough on how important it is to have a relationship with an HVAC contractor. I mean, if there's one thing that people means a lot to folks is whether they're hot or cold. And you have an office full of people and they're all on the same unit and they have offices that are right next door to each other, and one person's hot and the other person's cold. And so understanding your HVAC system and having a good relationship with an HVAC contractor is vitally important, especially when you talk about air quality and as moving forward. So I think I would recommend, contacting all four of us as you go forward, or people in our industry and moving forward and how to go. And again, right now, today it's COVID-19, next year it could be, a different virus, a bacteria, something. Just understanding how things go. And it is a global market. We are a social creature. We like to, interact and touch, but how can we do it in a safe way going forward?
Awesome. Thank you for the shout outs, Bill. We had a comment from the chat that you guys as panelists, each of you have completely embodied how helping each other helps all of us. So thank you for being excellent leaders in your industry, as well as great examples for everyone in business. You guys have been great. Well, I show that it is 10 o'clock on the dot. That concludes all of our questions. Again, if you guys that are attending have further questions, we're going to send you contact info, but only members will get the extra packet that the panelists worked so hard on. We will have 2 more installments to this particular webinar series, so stay tuned for those dates coming. And I know we have a 3-day weekend coming up, an actual holiday. So I strongly encourage everyone to take that extra Monday and not work from home. And that includes all of our panelists, if you can manage it. Guys, thank you so much on behalf of the Chamber. We appreciate you, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Take care, guys. We're going to end the meeting. Bye.
Thank you.